Another detail that surprised me was that they could monitor energy, the government can monitor energy consumption in a given apartment. So if the energy consumption level is too high, they know that the homeless, the floating population is another concern that the government has.
Yeah.
They can monitor energy consumption to a specific apartment and then know that there are too many people in that apartment and break in or knock on the door. I mean, how is that integrated into the surveillance system?
Yeah, I think so. One thing we've found, which is very overwhelming through this reporting process, is that Chinese government has a very huge appetite for different types of data points, and some of the data points they acquired through installing surveillance front ends like cameras and phone trackers, and they gather themselves. And there's other ways they can just like get access to data that other companies are already acquiring, like social media companies, and in this case, maybe energy companies. So, theoretically, if they want to, we discovered this through actually this thing that police has been doing called creating models for predictive policing. So they have something they specifically want to watch out for, and they kind of like come up with ways of like what kind of data points they can monitor and the pattern of that to determine if the behavior they watch for is taking place. Then they would go after whoever have this data to get it, so they can figure out the things they want to know.
So one last question, and I'm going to come back to the current situation. How do they integrate all this data? I mean, what tools are they using? Are they using only tools that they've developed, or are they using data management tools, data mining tools that from the United States or from the outside world?
So a lot of this stuff is built around bespoke software created by contractors, and a lot of the work we did is about the police basically saying, hey, we want somebody to build a software that does X, Y, and Z. And so it's created for them, but it's built using tools. I mean, you don't do this stuff without Intel and NVIDIA chips, without a PC running Windows, that kind of thing. And then base softwares. There's a lot of open source software that again you can use to build these tools out. So yeah, but ultimately, there are thousands and thousands of contractors that are saying, if you say, hey, I need you to aggregate a bunch of data on, I don't know, like say train travel, and I want to pull in my list of drug users that I know have been convicted of drugs in the past 5 years, and any person who goes between 3 districts in a day, I want an alarm sent to me because I think that person may be like going around selling drugs. They can do that, and there's actually national competitions between different police departments to come up with clever ideas like that, basically kind of, typecasting behaviors and saying, this is the way we're going to figure out that somebody is, selling drugs or going to petition or, whatever. And so, yeah, it's not that difficult. The thing is, a lot of this happens at a fairly local level. So one thing is, it's not as if somebody's sitting in Beijing, getting data from Hunan and saying, oh, this Hunan guy may be dealing drugs. It's all built at a very local level a lot of times. So at the higher level, you'll see other kinds of things. But at the local level, it is kind of almost like a sheriff saying, well, I want to know this. I have 1,000 cameras. I've convinced another 1,000 shop owners to give me their cameras. I have the local power grid, telling me what power usage. I have this, that, and the other thing. I'm going to mix it all together and, use it in this way. And so that's kind of how it works.
So American companies, Western companies, are involved at some level in helping establish the system. They facilitated it.
Yeah, at a base level, some of this stuff is I mean, there's a question of how commoditized certain electronics and technologies are that we kind of tend to use to sort of describe whether it's illegal, or whether it violates U.S. laws to sell in some cases. And more broadly, I think morally, there is a question of like, if you make a chip and it's a base chip that you can buy on Taobao, but it ends up being used in a computer that does this stuff, that's one thing. It's another if you're selling them in bulk, specifically to the police, and you're selling powerful systems that are integrated on behalf of the police, which has also been happening over the years. We did one story in Xinjiang where a supercomputer, was running and was being used to process a lot of this video data, and in that case, there are very high level sales relationships with companies like NVIDIA and Intel and others to make that supercomputer, with a supercomputing company. And it's just that, people really weren't looking into this stuff or trying to understand how it's being used. So yeah, in some cases, I think it's not to say that facilitation is happening every time, because there are ways that, companies have to sell very low level technology products. It's kind of the water we swim in these days. And so I wouldn't necessarily call that facilitation, but when you're, helping build a supercomputer, or when the Xinjiang police are on various entity lists and you continue to sell, in those cases, it feels like you are. So there are kind of ways to distinguish, but it certainly is reliant on the technologies that come out of the United States and other countries.
Wow.
Yeah, I just want to add a little bit, we during our reporting, there's another thing that we also noticed that's quite interesting. While we do see a lot of Western technology presence in China's surveillance apparatus, but we also noticed that when Chinese government trying to buy surveillance technology, they sometimes would note that we would only want domestic products. They actually do sometimes see using Western products, especially for things like data storage, as maybe have its own security risk. So that's one thing that is very interesting we noticed.
So Muyi, I was struck by the whole DNA testing video in your presentation. How did you obtain video of Chinese citizens having their fingers pricked and their blood taken to have their DNA recorded by the government? I mean, how did you? I would have thought that the government would have made it difficult to obtain that kind of video. How did you get that?
Yeah, so one of my job every day is to just hunt videos posted on various corners on the Chinese internet. Actually, the kind of content that you would see on Chinese internet is surprising, and literally Paul and I did a piece today that's about how surprising it is, all these protest videos are coming out on Chinese social media. Same with the DNA testing, DNA information collection video. On one side is that the government is actually bragging, some governments bragging that this is a good technology they are using to help catch criminals faster, and to make everyone's life safer. So they're putting it in local news clips, and then people grab it and
they're bragging about it. They're bragging.
Yeah, they're grabbing about it, and then some random people would grab it and upload it to internet. So yeah, that's how I found a lot of them. And there are vloggers in China. When they got their blood collected, they would just film that, and then people in China, and maybe censors doesn't even see it as much sensitive. It's some people's daily life, so they didn't really censor it. But of course, when we know more background and context, we know how serious of a problem this is, and then we know to take a look at these kind of videos. Yeah, so they're out there on Chinese internet.